everybody, to another Mastery Mondays stream. And in today's spectacle, we are going to be continuing the Footsies Handbook series. All right, so now we've gotten past all the 10 major elements, and now we get into the, I believe they're called the supplements. All right, which are these like little additional like fragments or sections that they add on to the Footsies Handbook or whatever. All right, so as always, like the video, subscribe, and let's get this show on the road. Woo! Okay, so supplement A. No discussions of Footsies is complete without a tactical overview on projectiles. This entry is more abstract than previous installments, but it was too big a concept to leave out and too big a concept to cover in one article. Consider this a primer on the topic and look for more fireball strategy articles in the future. All right, make no mistake about it. Mid-range projectiles are absolutely a major facet of Footsies. In fact, their uses are so diverse and their impact so significant that it's impossible to cover everything in one article. I'll attempt to provide a conceptual introduction instead. Tactically speaking, a fireball is a relatively slow poke with good range. Ideally, you want to rely on attacks with roughly 4 to 5 frames of startup, which will cover quickly. By contrast, projectile specials typically have over 10 frames of startup, followed by lengthy recovery periods. Okay, so fireballs are essentially a poke. All right, it's like a traveling poke. It's like a 2-in-1. It's like a pal, an extension of you that separates from your body and kind of does a little bit of work. Okay, all right. So, to compensate, projectiles possess one exceptional property. Their active hitbox is invincible. With physical attacks, effective range and vulnerable range are approximately equal. Even if you have a full screen normal move like Dalsum Stand Heavy Punch, whiffing it in front of Dan still gives him an opportunity to retaliate. Furthermore, Dan's invincible Koryukin will counter Dalsum Stand Heavy Punch from any spot inside its range. These basic principles form the foundation of Footsies. The rules of engagement change when dealing with fireballs. Counteracting the opponent's attack is no longer enough to hurt them because projectiles are independent entities. Thus, your table of counters shift dramatically. Okay? Most importantly, you lose the option to retaliate after standing back because projectiles will continue advancing until they make contact, at which point you'll be pushed out of range. All right? Or the other alternative is that it ends up leaving the screen without making contact. Okay, so that's the other alternative. All right, and there are rare cases, some characters like Chun-Li, where their projectile dissipates at a specific range. So that's the three things, right? It's like some form of contact, some sort of dissipation, right, where it just runs out of active frames, or it just leaves the screen altogether. Okay, so there are projectiles that if I were on one side of the screen, okay, so here's a prime example. If I were to play Guile, all right, we're gonna go over here. But have Ken just do that, right? Oops. Okay. Oh, why is this so slow? Oh, it's not fit. Hold on. Let's do this again. This is a lot faster. Okay, there you go. But you see, this fireball just literally keeps going. So it has to make contact or it has to leave the screen. All right, but that's not the case with every projectile. So Chun-Li's is different. Chun, if we were to do the same thing, okay, we'll do the same exact thing. See how it just dissipates? So even if I did the heavy version, see, it doesn't go as far, right? So you have to identify that with the characters that you're fighting. So when you're conscious of that, you understand what spaces you can stand at. That way you can just kind of neutralize that, you know? All right, so In fact, the longer a projectile travels before connecting, the more frame advantage it creates for its owner. Okay, so basically, let's say, let's turn off this recording. If I were to make Ken block, right? This move naturally on block is -6, -7 for light. Okay, so let's do light a little bit further away, and it's +9. So the reason is every move in the game has an animation. So as she's throwing her fireball and she's doing this elegant little hypnotic trance of a dance, right? She's going through these recovery frames, but the fireball is still traveling. And remember the rules of the fireball. It either has to do 3 things, right, guys? What are the 3 things? They hit, dissipate, or they're off the screen. Okay, those are the 3 options. Okay, all right. So they have to hit, go off the screen, or they dissipate because they just have a set amount of active frames. All right. So when she is doing an animation, her animation at the absolute, like, no matter what, Chun-Li moves the same amount of time. You understand? But what causes the change in value of the frame data is when you block the fireball, because the fireball block stun is the same amount no matter what. So let's say if there's 10 frames of block stun on a fireball, right? Just pretending. For 10 frames, you can't move. If my fireball hits you later, and I am also in the later frames of my recovery, which we talked about, Chun-Li always recovers the same time. It's just the fireball makes contact later or earlier, or whatever that dictates the frame value. That's what's going to determine you being -6 like here versus you being -10 right here. See? Or even more further away. You understand? So ideally, when you want to have more control, you want to use fireball a little bit further away, so that way you can hit at the tail end of the fireball's active frames, or at the same time when your character is on the tail end of their recovery. You see what I'm saying? So let's do this visually, so for people that might not be understanding this. So let's say I do fireball, right? I'm gonna do fireball and I'm gonna pause the screen like that. Okay, so you see this animation and you see how Chun, her hands stay out, and then she comes and brings them back in, right? Like this. See how her hands kind of wrap back? That's like that Wing Chun motion. Okay, but if I do it over here, it's the same thing. See, it's the same thing. But the thing is that the fireball contact happens so much later, and you still have to deal with those 10 frames of block stun we talked about, right? Those 10 frames. It's not 10 frames here. I think it's like 26. But point still stands that you have to deal with those yellow bars. That's what this represents. Okay, these yellow bars right here, those represent the block stun. Okay, so for the fireball specifically, I think it's like 26 frames. 26 frames. All right, so you have to deal with this 26 frames, or you can't do anything. You can't move. You can drive reversal, cancel block stun, but that's the only thing you can do in the game. Okay, so this right here, these yellow blocks, right? This is your block stun. Okay, that's your block stun, and this is the same no matter what. So watch, I did it further there, right? Okay, if I do it here, it's still 26. If I do it over here, it's still 26. You see what I'm saying, guys? This is how you visualize fireball advantage. You want them to deal with this yellow as late as possible, so that way you have way more freedom to move around. Okay, so let's say, for example, I have Ken set up to do this, right? He's set up to do crouch and medium kick. He's gonna just fire off crouch and medium kick as soon as he blocks anything. See? Okay, at the fastest possible timing. So if I do this, that's a punish. Okay, because remember, what did we say? We said that fireball up close light punch version is -7, right? So this is a punish. Okay, if I go a little bit further back right here, he's not in range, and you know that he's open now to getting whiff punish, right? But now let's add a little bit more freedom to this. So if I go further away, typically a situation like this, if I do fireball, right? Fireball dash, I get hit. See, I could not block. Dash, I'm blocking immediately. I'm getting hit. All right. What you do is you want a little bit more advantage. So you would do it from a little further away, you see? And now you can block. But not only can I block here, I could probably press a button. See? So because he's dealing with that 26 frames of block stun later while I am dashing, the same rules apply. So now I have more freedom of timing. Okay, so the things about Street Fighter is all that exists really in a fundamental standpoint when it comes to like these characters is it's movement and timing. That's it. That's all it is. Movement doesn't just mean like your character's ability to move, but their reach, like a button. That's technically movement because the hitbox is traveling outwards. It's extending. That's a form of movement. It's a static movement. It's not a dynamic movement like me moving around like this, but it's a form of movement. You can simplify the game to that, right? It's movement and timing. That's all it is. All right. It's as simple as it is. So when you manipulate the values of block stun, it gives you an advantage in timing, which can help you with an advantage in movement. You see what I'm saying? So that's how you can kind of simplify engagements in fighting games. You can just say, oh, if I just get an advantage in this way, it'll help me gain an advantage in the other way. See? It's as simple as that. And then when you figure out why characters win matchups, it's because one character is just dominating on expressing an advantage a lot faster or sooner or with less resources, with less commitment than the other character. Example, Guy versus Dalsum. If Guy versus Dalsum starts off, round start, Dalsum is winning. Why? Because he's at a range where most of his tools work. Zangief's tools don't really work at that range. You know what I'm saying? All right, so let me see. So what did we just talk about? We talked about the advantages, right? Okay, cool. So projectiles can be utilized as pokes just as easily as normals can. Fireballs can apply pressure, beat out mistimed normal attacks, repel aggressive opponents, and punish mistakes. So you see, fireballs are really strong. Look at all of these things you just neutralized. Pressure, horizontal pressure, right? On the ground, as long as you're fast enough. Beating out mistimed normal attacks. So if somebody maybe presses a button too late or too early, right? So here's an example of that, right? So let's say that. Missing. I just need charge with Chun. Actually, let me do another character. It'll be easier with the Ryu. Okay. So you see that forward aggression right there? Caught him, right? That's a good spot to throw a fireball, is when you know somebody's unblocking, right? You can just simplify that, okay? So if I do it too early, he blocks, right? But if I know his timing of when he confirms, I basically want to throw the fireball right in conjunction with when he mentally makes that transition. It says, okay, I'm good. That's what you're trying to snipe when you throw a fireball, is the, okay, I'm good. You understand? And that is what, once you pinpoint that in an opponent, that's when you can start to gain greater leverage on a player's like temperaments, because you can frustrate them a lot easier. Okay, what up, Arms? So here's another example. He's gonna try to poke me, right? And he does it too late, or he does it, yeah, he whiffs it, right? So you whiff punished it. Okay, so maybe he pressed it, maybe he presses it too early. Okay, right? Maybe he presses it too early and he gets hit on counter hit or something like that, right? Or maybe he does it too late, or rather he does it too late and he gets counter hit. And if he does it too early, then I can whiff punish him, right? Because I'm not where he thought I was. Okay, so you can use fireballs like that, and then you're nullifying all of that. Okay, and that's the idea of it. It's not so like you can fucking win a round off of one fireball. It's not the point. The point is just it's a form of control, right? It's a form of influence. So the idea is not, you don't throw a fireball because you don't want them to jump. You're throwing a fireball to elicit a response. It doesn't matter what the response is. That's the thing. So when people think of throwing fireballs, they think very linear until they get to this point, this epiphany where it's like, the fireball is not linear. It's not forced to just elicit this one response of jumping. It's to elicit a response, period. So it's like your investigative tool. You don't throw a fireball like, oh, I know what you want to do. You throw it because you're like, I'm curious as to what you're going to do. You understand? So that's why I say, like, fighting games, the key to getting better is asking the right questions, because there's no universal answer, right? So why would you focus on a universal answer? You'd have to focus on, how do I cultivate the right questions, so that way you have a sense of direction regardless who you play, what matchup you find yourself in, no matter what position you are in, right? Whatever the situation that's been created, you always have a proactive, forward-thinking way to evolve or graduate from one situation to a better one. You understand? So that's mad important. Is you gotta be more curious as opposed to imposing these expectations. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to like sit there and be reactive. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you have a willingness and an openness to accept whatever the responses that they give you, and you already know and are confident in your ability to neutralize that thing. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean you'll do it every time. It just, you know that more often than not you'll win that engagement. You know what I'm saying? So for example, if you have like a character that frustrates the fuck out of you, let's say like Honda frustrates people. Why? Because like butt slam's fucking toxic, right? Headbutt's toxic, right? Just because I don't perfect parry it the right way one time, does that mean I should stop trying to perfect parry it? No, that doesn't make sense. You know? So in the same regard, it's like, you don't punish something properly the first time, you're gonna stop doing it. That doesn't make sense. So some fireballs, let's see, where were we? Projectiles can be utilized as pokes just as easily as normals can. Fireballs can apply pressure, beat out mistimed normal attacks, repel aggressive opponents, and punish mistakes. There's no unwritten law restricting pokes to normal moves. Some fireballs even knock down, which makes them viable as mid-screen counter pokes. Even if they carry frame disadvantage when blocked, most opponents are rendered incapable of retaliation after getting pushed so far backward. So another component of the fireball game you have to master, guys, you have to master this, is the pushback. Okay, a lot of people are not aware of pushback. You guys, very few people pay attention to this shit. You gotta pay attention to the pushback. How do you do that? Go to training mode and you simply line up a character's front foot as best as possible to like one of these darker gray lines, right? What you'll find is between these dark, right, things like this, right, you'll notice that there will be 5, every black would, like thicker black line represents 5 squares, right? 5 units. And in between one giant like grid is 10. So I like to use the measurements like this, where I would say, like, you know, from here to here equals 1.0. Okay, 1.0 squares. And this is how you measure tools. You can measure distance of pokes, you can measure pushback. Okay, so what you do is maybe you want to line them up, right, as close as possible, right? Right there's perfect. Okay, let's put him right here, right? I take a snapshot so that way he's exactly there. Every time I push him back, I snap it right back there, and I just keep practicing the spacing. Okay, so we do this. So now I know, all right, what is the pushback of his fireball on block? Okay, it's about half a giant square, which is 0.5 squares, right? Okay, let's do it with every version just to make sure. Light fireball, medium fireball, heavy. Okay, what about EX? Whoa, see how significant that is? Imagine you didn't realize that fireball just yeets you across the fucking screen like that, and then guess what, you're Ken trying to do this, right? Trying to do this, let me see, right? You're like, oh yeah, I got you, haha, right? Versus, see what I'm saying? This is why you want to be very mindful of this. Imagine how many people you could close rounds out against by taking advantage of this. How many rounds you could have avoided losing because you weren't aware of this. You know what I'm saying? This is stuff that you have to be mindful of, guys. But that's okay. I'm here to save the day, okay? I'm Captain Save a Pro. You see what I did there? Got you. All right. So now, that's what they were talking about when the whole idea of you could be negative, but you know, they're not able to like retaliate. So frame that only tells you half the story, right? Like I'm -9 there, this is -1, right? But you saw the spacing was the most important part. I don't really give a shit about the frame data when I'm trying to spacing trap, right? Because I know you're gonna whiff. Doesn't matter. If anything, I want to be negative because I want you to think it's your turn, right? That's the most important part. Okay, so it's very important to do that. You got to look at buttons, you got to look at specials, unique attacks, right? Stuff like that. Very, very important to be aware of that type of stuff. Okay, all right, so 2 direct universal methods of dealing with projectiles are jumping over them and stuffing them during startup. Okay, or like recovery, right? Because you can, like, you know, jumping, you basically punish it. Okay, yeah, you can jump over them and you catch them on the recovery, right? and then you can counter hit it on startup. So what that essentially would look like is, so for example, the traditional answer is this, right? All right, you do whatever, right? Like, okay. But the other thing you can do is you can trade. So if we were to look at the values of damage, you'll actually see that, holy smokes, I did way more damage than him. I did 96 or 960. I'm still going off of the old units of measurement, but I did 960 damage. He did 72. And not only did I do more damage than him, I'm also plus. You know what I'm saying? So this is crucial because there are situations where, let's say, both of our lives, right, are super low. I don't really want to risk being, you know, like, let's say we're both at 8% health. I don't really want to risk jumping and then I get anti-tired. That shit sucks, right? I don't want that to happen, right? Because then I get played like a fiddle, right? And then I'm dead. We don't want that to happen, you know. So this looks like this, right? I'm thinking, oh, I got you. Oh shit, it kills me. Bodied, kills me. Okay, I don't want to deal with that. Instead, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna play with a lower risk and more accuracy on the ground. Because remember, when you jump, you don't have freedom to do shit anymore. You can only jump in a linear trajectory, right? If I jump, my trajectory is this, and then all I could do is attack or try to fake, and all of that shit is not safe. Okay, so you can gamble like that, but you're so linear because now your opponent knows, oh, he jumped, this is the trajectory, these are his options, 1, you know, 2, blah blah blah, 3, maybe press a button here, blah 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 blah, blah, right? And they've simplified the engagement. You don't want to do that. Here you stay on the ground, you have a myriad of options, which also include the jump in that we just talked about, right? So just the threat of it, you have this, you have drive rush, right? You have DI, you have so many options, you have, you know, a fireball, right? All of these things that come horizontally, you know, and they don't want to get hit. They're thinking, damn, I can't really take a hit because they might kill me. Okay, so what you could do is, in a situation like this, and look, and who wins? Me. This is one of the most fundamental principles of zoning, all right, is to trade when you have a life lead. If you guys have ever played chess, it is the equivalent of being up in material. If I have material advantage, right, I want to trade to simplify the end game because I'm going to go into the end game with a material advantage. I'm going to have more minor pieces than you, or maybe I have a pawn advantage, pawn structure advantage, right? There's maybe just better cohesion across my side of the board, my spacing, my tempo, right? My initiative has been established. Maybe your pieces are just not even a part of the game. Maybe your bishops are blocked by your pawns on the same color, right? So you want to simplify the game, but the problem is when people are getting close to winning, they complicate the game because they try to use force. You don't need to use force. This is actually when you want to scale it back and you want to resort to using power. And what's power? Power is, you know, applying your sense of wisdom, your sense of security, and your guidance, right? All those things, your decision making. Your wisdom is your experiences leading up to this point. Your sense of security is just being confident in who you are and your capabilities, and that's what equates to your power, right? And that's your power is what will give you the consistency. Force is not ideal. When you try to force things, you break your teeth and then you fall flat on your face and you get frustrated. How would I know? Because I did it. Okay, I used to do that and I do that no longer. Okay, so I don't want you guys to do that. I want you guys to be better than that. So now that is one of the things you got to be very, very mindful of. Okay, so when you are zoning, you want to try to get the life lead and then trade. Use trades, because trades will frustrate the fuck out of people, and then that makes them take bigger risks, and then when they take bigger risks, they jump, or it makes people become a shell of themselves, right? And they collapse, their confidence collapses, and then now they give you the leverage to play however the fuck you want to play. Okay, all right, so remember, get the life lead and then trade. Life lead, trade, right? Life lead, trade. All right, that's what you want to do. Life lead and then trade. Okay, that's essentially fireball game simplified. Okay, all right. And how do you trade? You could use buttons that have really good hitboxes that extend far enough. So like Ryu stand heavy punch. Okay, that's like a really good option for that. All right, so like we were saying, 2 direct universal methods of dealing with projectiles are jumping over them and stuffing them during startup. Jumping is always risky, but the reward is high provided you land a damaging combo. Using a quick poke to prevent the fireball from coming out involves less commitment. However, it does require you to stay within close proximity, which is a challenge against fireball characters. It's always wise to build meter as you work to close the gap, because even the threat of a super move can be enough to discourage opponents from throwing fireballs, tipping the matchup advantage in your favor. So basically, when you get into proximity, because you've threatened a jump, or you've threatened an EX fireball, or you've threatened a trade, you can now get closer to where you can make contact, right? And then it's a lot easier for you to do the things that you want to do, essentially. Okay, the entire strategic landscape of Street Fighter changes dramatically once you begin thinking of projectiles as components of footsies. Fireballs are what transform Shotos from mediocre poking characters into mid-range powerhouses. The difference between a beginner and an expert player is immediately apparent from how well they apply fireballs in footsies. Okay, so that concludes supplement A of the Footsies hand guide. Okay, as always, please consider subscribing to the channel, let people know we exist, share this video with your mama, your grandpappy, your dog, I don't know, your neighbor, doesn't matter to me. Let them know we exist. Come through the Fighter Academy, we'll take care of you. You know what I'm saying? Fighter Academy is what, guys? What do we say it is? It is where perfection and progress is. Oh, I lied. It's where principles of progress are perfected as bars. See what I'm saying? The triple P, you know what I'm saying? But now we ain't talking about no loans. All right, we ain't talking about those pandemic scams. All right, we talking about different triple P. Okay, so yeah, so let me know in the comment section what you guys think. If you guys enjoyed the video, let me know what your favorite part was. How do you feel about the fireball game and footsies and stuff like that? We will see you in the next video.